The 23rd of February 1944, 25,000 feet above Nazi-occupied Germany, the temperature outside was -40 degrees. Inside the cockpit of the B-17 Flying Fortress named Yankee Doodle, 23-year-old Lieutenant John Morgan from Ohio checked his gauges one last time. 300 bombers flew around him in tight formation, all bound for the Messerschmitt aircraft factory at Regensburg. In 4 minutes his plane would become a flying coffin. He already knew he would not leave his crew. The mission had begun normally at 0600 from Thorpe Abbotts, England. Morgan's crew of 10 had already flown 15 missions together. Today was number 16. Co-pilot, Lieutenant James, Jimmy Chen, California. Navigator, Lieutenant Robert Walsh, Massachusetts. Bombardier, Staff Sergeant David Clenney, New York. Flight Engineer, Technical Sergeant Frank Russo, Pennsylvania. Radio Operator, Staff Sergeant William Hayes, Texas. Ball Turret Gunner, Sergeant Michael O'Brien, Illinois. Waist Gunners, Sergeant Thomas Rivera, Arizona, and Sergeant Charles Anderson, Michigan. Tail Gunner, Sergeant Henry Jackson, Georgia. They were more than a crew. They were brothers. The B-17 earned its nickname Flying Fortress, honestly. 4 Wright Cyclone engines, 13 50 caliber machine guns, and an ability to absorb punishment that amazed everyone until the day it finally couldn't. They crossed into German airspace at 0943. The winter sky was cruelly clear. German radar had watched them since takeoff. The intercom crackled. "Bandits! 11 o'clock high," Jackson's voice from the tail. Morgan's stomach tightened. Focke-Wulf, 190 seconds, plunged through the formation like wolves. Cannons flashed. Tracers stitched the sky. The fortress shuddered as 20mm rounds tore through aluminium skin. Russo's top turret guns roared in reply, hot brass raining on Morgan's boots. The first wave passed. Minor hits. They were still flying. The second attack was worse. Messerschmitt Bf 109 seconds joined the 190 seconds, hitting from every angle at once. 50 feet to Morgan's left, Memphis Belle II took a direct cannon shell to the number 3 engine. It exploded in orange fire, spun downward, and disintegrated. Morgan counted only 3 parachutes. 7 men gone in seconds. Disaster found Yankee Doodle. A lone Bf 109 came head-on, cannons winking, shells ripped through the nose. The plexiglass shattered. Clenney died instantly. Walsh took shrapnel in the chest and collapsed across his table. More shells punched through the cockpit floor. Hydraulic fluid sprayed across the panel. Number 2 engine burst into flame. Number 1 began smoking. Both left engines were dying. The B-17 lurched, falling out of formation. Chen fought the yoke beside Morgan. Hydraulics gone, losing pressure fast. 2 engines out. Fire spreading. 90 miles inside Germany. Protocol was simple. Ring the bailout bell and jump. But the intercom was dead. The men in the rear had no idea how bad it was. If Morgan rang the bell and jumped now, some would never reach an escape hatch before the bomber spun in. Morgan looked at Chen. No words were needed. "Get them out," Morgan said quietly. "I'll hold her steady." Chen hesitated 1 heartbeat, then unbuckled and disappeared aft. John Morgan was alone in a burning cockpit. The left wing became a torch. Heat bled through the walls. Smoke poured from both engines. The aircraft wanted to roll left. Morgan used every ounce of strength to keep the wings level. 60 seconds. Altitude bleeding 500 feet a minute. 90 seconds. He glanced back. Chen was herding men toward hatches. 2 minutes. The fire reached the wing tanks. Aluminum peeled away in burning strips. Morgan could see the red glowing spars inside the wing. Chen reappeared. "Everyone's moving to the hatches!" Morgan shook his head. "Count 20 more seconds. Then you jump." "We don't have 20. "Then take 10. Go." Chen vanished. 3 minutes alone. The bomber dropped through 17,000 feet. The wing flexed like paper. 3 minutes 30. A sound like a cannon shot the main spar snapped. The left wing folded upward. The fortress rolled violently. Morgan hauled back on the controls with everything he had, buying a few final seconds. 3 minutes 45. She went into a flat spin. Only then did Morgan unbuckle, grab his chute, and fight the G-forces to the escape hatch. At 4 minutes exactly, he jumped. The silence after the ripcord pull was total. He looked around. 9 parachutes blossomed beneath him. Every man who could get out did. Clenay and Walsh were the only ones lost in the attack. Morgan had kept his promise. Yankee Doodle broke apart behind him, scattering across 5 miles of Bavarian countryside. Morgan landed hard in snow, rolled, hid his chute in a ditch, and checked his escape kit. Silk map, compass button, chocolate, Reichsmarks, hacksaw blade. Swiss border 180 miles south. He needed civilian clothes and darkness. By 1300, German patrols were everywhere, hunting airmen for the posted reward. Morgan hid beneath a fallen oak and waited for night, shivering, forcing himself to stay awake. At 1,330, 8 soldiers passed within 15 feet. One stopped, lit a cigarette, and stood directly above Morgan's hiding place. Morgan didn't breathe for a full minute. Night fell. He began moving, whistling the 3-note recognition signal every 50 meters. 2,115. An answer. Chen stepped from the trees. The 2 men hugged like brothers. They found Rousseau and Hayes in a barn, then O'Brien and Jackson by a frozen creek. 6 survivors reunited. Rivera, Anderson, and 2 others were still missing, but the 6 refused to split up. Morgan led them south through the forest. Dawn, February 24. They holed up in an abandoned hunting lodge. That afternoon, Jackson spotted a patrol. 6 Germans. The crew scattered as rifles cracked. Bullets splintered bark around them. Morgan hid behind a log and listened to his men being captured. Chen's voice shouting, "We surrender!" 4 more gone. Only he and Jackson remained free. For 3 more days, the 2 stole clothes from a wash line, potatoes from a cellar, slept in haylofts, and walked south at night. On February 27, a farmer spotted them at dawn. Police arrived minutes later. Capture was quiet and inevitable. At the Luftwaffe interrogation center, a German officer already knew everything. "You are Lieutenant John Morgan. You stayed at the controls so your crew could escape." Morgan only nodded. The officer looked at him for a long moment. "You will go to Stalag Luft III. You will be treated correctly." Morgan spent 15 months as a prisoner, starvation, freezing winters, and finally the brutal long march in January 1945 through blizzards as the Germans fled the Russians. When liberation came on the 8th of May 1945, he weighed 115 pounds. Back home, he learned the full toll. Clean and Walsh, dead in the nose. Every other man survived the war, most as POWs. 8 out of 10 came home because of 4 minutes over Germany. He was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross, but the medal always felt hollow. 2 families still received telegrams. Morgan finished college on the GI Bill, became an engineer, married Sarah, raised 3 children, and never spoke of the war. Nightmares and sudden noises were his private burden. In 1976, at the first big B-17 reunion, he saw Chen Rousseau, Hayes, old friends with grey hair. Only then did he talk about those 4 minutes. Chen told him something that broke him all over again. Several crewmen had refused to jump. They wanted to stay and help their pilot. Chen had to physically throw them out the hatch. They were ready to die with you, John. That's how much they loved you. Years later, speaking to cadets, a young man asked, "Sir, were you scared?" "Terrified," Morgan answered. "But fear doesn't decide. Responsibility does. Those 9 men were mine. I couldn't leave them." Another cadet asked, "Would you do it again?" "In a heartbeat," he said. "That's what leadership is. Doing the hard thing when it has to be done, no matter the cost." John Morgan died in 2003 at age 81. At his funeral, James Chen, 83, and leaning on a cane, spoke last. "John gave me 58 extra years. My children, my grandchildren, none of them would exist but for one choice in a burning cockpit. Hundreds of people walk this earth today because of 4 minutes on the 23rd of February, 1944. That is his legacy. The men who flew the B-17 seconds knew the odds. Only 35% survived a 25-mission tour. The 8th Air Force suffered 47,000 casualties higher than any other American service. They climbed into those aluminum tubes every morning anyway. John Morgan's story is one of thousands. Pilots who held dying bombers steady, gunners who kept shooting with mortal wounds, ordinary young men who became immortal through loyalty and courage. The planes are in museums now. Almost all the men are gone. Henry Jackson, the last of Morgan's crew, died in 2019 at 94. But as long as we tell their stories, they live. 4 minutes, 9 lives, hundreds of descendants, one quiet pilot from Ohio who showed the world what leadership really means. Never forget them.